until 1965 with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. However, the August 18, 1920 ratification began a long process toward gaining equality, not only of suffrage, but many other rights formerly denied women. That process continues today. On Tuesday, the actual 100th anniversary of Tennessee's ratification, the city held virtual events from 9:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. We are especially grateful that each of the day's events are available on video. I will be forwarding a list of them to council members. Many of you were unable to attend the virtual events, now can watch them at your leisure. On Tuesday, our educational day began at 9:30 with the state suffrage centennial's reenactment inside the House chambers at the state capitol. The program was cleverly written by Mac Perkle, who never disappoints. The actors included some sitting legislators, including our own Brenda Gilmore, who I saw on the screen earlier. At 10:30, we had the dedication of the Tennessee Women's Suffrage Monument in Centennial Park. This is the one I'm a bit partial to, since my team has been working almost 10 years to make the monument possible. We're extremely pleased that Alan McQuire, who created the beautiful monument, was present, along with his wife, Andre. We were also very happy to have you, Mayor Cooper, to join us. Your talk was just what we hoped that you would say. We know you have history chops with an undergrad degree in history from Harvard, and you surely did not disappoint us. The excitement of the day were the highlight pro women skydivers team. They have scheduled many jumps this year in hopes of encouraging women to use their right to vote. At 11:30 on Tuesday, we had the virtual opening of the Women's Vote Room at the Nashville Public Library. The bell ringing at the end of the program was a great idea that our committee chair, Margaret, championed because she read about the fact that Nashville was one of only a few cities that did not ring bells in August 1920. At 12:30 on Tuesday, the Hermitage Hotel, site of the War of the Roses, had a lovely ceremony to unveil a new National Landmark plaque awarded to them by the National Park Service. Again, we observed you, Mayor, demonstrating your keen knowledge of the history. At 1:30, the Hermitage Hotel had a short parade around the area nearby, including the state capitol. An antique car club allowed them to use their cars, and 4 of our council members were in one of those cars. It was a lot of fun, and I was honored to ride in the most beautiful car in the parade. From 6 to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, the Nashville Ballet performed its new dance entitled 72 Steps, which signifies the 72 steps the suffragists had to climb to get inside the state capitol to lobby the legislators. It will be available to teachers to show to their students. As if Tuesday was not exciting enough, there are events still coming up. Tonight, the National Commission is sponsoring a Forward into Light theme and have coordinated with cities all across the U.S. Many federal buildings and state capitals will be lighted with the purple, white, and yellow color of suffragists. On the list to be lighted tonight is our state capitol and the Natchez Trace Parkway. I suspect the Hermitage Hotel and perhaps our own Korean Veterans Bridge will also be lighted. Continuing throughout this month, and even some throughout the year, are many other events and special displays at local locations, including the Parthenon West Gallery, the State Museum, the Frist Art Museum, LaQuire Gallery, the Hermitage Hotel, and the Lane Motor Museum. In years to come, there will be a wide trail of what we of the 2020 generation of Nashvillians have left for future generations. Our beautiful monument in Centennial Park and the Women's Vote Room in the National Archives Library, as well as a treasure trove of materials for research at the Tennessee State Library and Archives. It's been an honor to serve on the Mayor's Council. Thank you.
Next, thank you so much, Alma, for that history and the description of all the wonderful events and for your part in planning so many of them. Nancy Van Rees, if you are on, could you talk a little bit about the Metro Council resolutions that you've done so far and upcoming? And then after that, turn it over to Brenda.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It has been my utmost pleasure to serve under two mayors, 13, 14 months on this council, and I'm bringing greetings of the council, particularly the historic 20 female members of the Metro Council here in 2020. We worked diligently on the Mayor's Council to historic resolutions took place. There were resolutions that were crafted by the historic committee of this council and endorsed by the Women's Caucus. Of those seven, two of particularly important recognition of African American suffragists in Davidson County. First in the acknowledgement of the Frankie Pierce Park, and then in February, our sincere pleasure, and now in retrospect, an enormous opportunity to see the votes for women room in the National Library, where 17 of the 20 women of the Metro Council were able to convene, have read aloud the resolution acknowledging African American suffragists during Black History Month, to read that out loud in what will become a historic location near the Votes for Women room. In fact, when you're able to visit, and I know the Mayor able to take a quick peek around because of the video, the final on the timeline includes a photograph of those women from that day, and super pleased that took place. Those 7 resolutions are part of your packet. With resolution on the 18th of August, presented by the Women's Caucus as well. We cannot mark Women's Equality Day without remembering the voters of color who weren't included in the 19 victory. Now, women who faced poll taxes and literary tests. Reason this particular Women's Caucus Metro Council is extremely pleased to have presented a complete packet of women's history as it relates to the suffrage movement, not only as part of this report, but also as a complete historic packet for the Votes for Women room. The resolutions fully signed by the council are now part of the exhibit there, and will be able to be studied and researched for generations to come. So it's my pleasure to be able to regard, and I truly appreciated the opportunity to do so. Further, as you review this council, the Women's Caucus is to discuss with you any necessary legislation and support to execute. That we should pass it over to Brenda, and so I will. Thank you.
Hello.
We can hear you, Brenda.
Okay. Now, did you say me? Was she passing it to me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Mayor Cooper, members of the Metropolitan Council, members of the council on the status of women, Mayor's Office staff, and all those joining us on the call. Mayor Cooper, we are so honored to join you today, and we thank you for the opportunity to share with you recommendations from the Council. I take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank First Lady Laura Cooper, who gave of her time and talents to our work. Also to members of your staff, Mary Falls and Kathy Buggs. Thanks so much, ladies, for your participation. To my amazing co-chairs, Ann Davis, whose calm and steady hand kept us moving forward throughout this process, and to Renata Sota, whose editorial skills created this remarkable document we present here today. It has been an honor to work with both of you ladies and to get to know you better. To the incredible group of women who make up the Mayor's Council of the Status of Women, there's a list in the report. On behalf of Ann and Renata, please accept our heartfelt thanks for your participation, leadership, and contributions to this effort. Finally, special thanks to the countless women who made presentations to our council and whose expertise informed our work. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Bonnie Dow.
Can unmute myself. Thanks so much, Brenda. Good morning, Mayor Cooper. To offer some context for the recommendations you're going to hear shortly, I'm here to review some key information about the state of women in Nashville and Tennessee. Bluntly put, Tennessee, including Nashville, is not an easy place to be a woman. The numbers on our health and safety, our employment status, our ability to combine work and family, and our political participation lag behind much of the nation. Much of the information that follows is drawn from the Chamber's Vital Signs report, which helpfully includes gender among its metrics, and also from the work of Think Tennessee's State of Our State report on women in the workforce. Let's start with income. Women between 18 and 34 are the largest demographic among those living in poverty in Davidson County, which means women right in the middle of their childbearing years. Yet half of families in the state depend on a female breadwinner, and in Tennessee, women make up over 2/3 of the low-wage workforce. Women in Nashville make approximately 83 cents for every dollar a man makes. Black, Hispanic, and other women of color earn even less. In managerial occupations in the county, women cluster in the lowest paying jobs. Women account for only 37% of Metro's employees, and if you're a transgender woman employed by Metro, you do not receive transgender inclusive healthcare benefits. Many women don't work because childcare is prohibitively expensive. In Tennessee, the average cost of childcare consumed 37% of a family's average household income, or 108% of a minimum wage income. Here in Davidson County, we've lost 16% of our childcare capacity, measured by the number of childcare centers in the last 20 years, while the city's population grew by 21% during that same period. The annual economic losses in Nashville due to insufficient childcare total $235 million. A shocking 98% of Nashville parents said in a recent survey that inadequate childcare hurt their work productivity and career opportunities. That the cost and availability of childcare severely impede women's employment prospects is a fact. It's hard for women to make a good living here. It's hard to combine that with raising children, and it's hard to do it safely. We have a nationally recognized Office of Family Safety here in Nashville, but there's still progress to be made around women's safety by raising awareness and by devising and funding intervention strategies that work to prevent violence against women. Tennessee ranks 5th in the nation for the rate at which men kill women. In 2017, 90% of the 69 women killed by men were killed by someone they knew, and 76% were killed by gunfire. 9 of those women were killed in Davidson County. More than half of crimes against persons are domestic violence related, and Metro Nashville police respond to a domestic violence call every 20 minutes. Again, this is all worse for women of color. One of the ways that women can make their voices heard on these issues and others that affect them is by participating in the political process. But Tennessee is not an easy place to do that. By almost every measure, Tennessee laws are designed to suppress the vote, particularly for young people, people of color, and new arrivals to our community. Tennessee now consistently ranks 49th or 50th in voter participation among all of the states. Laws in Tennessee discouraging voting are a fairly recent phenomenon. Back in 1996, we ranked 10th in ease of voting. 20 years later, we're at 48th. As women represent 54% of the vote, we're the most impacted by these issues. Voting laws are controlled by the state, of course, but we believe that there are local actions that can raise awareness around this issue. I know that my portion of this program will prove to be the most depressing part of what you'll hear today. I hope that you will interpret these troubling statistics as a call to action. Nashville is a vibrant and progressive city in so many ways, but women here face important challenges as they pursue economic security and healthy and safe lives for themselves and their families. My purpose here has been to set the stage for the recommendations that will follow about what Metro and the mayor's office can do to make a positive difference in the lives of women in our city. I hope what you hear today underscores the wisdom of your decision to continue the Mayor's Council on the State of Women, and also persuades you that this council is a group of smart and dedicated women that should be allowed to keep doing their work on behalf of the women of Nashville. Let me now introduce Abby Rubenfeld, who will present the recommendations on workplace issues and equality. Abby, you need to unmute yourself.
Did that do it? Okay, sorry, I'm not very technological. Any of you who are my age can understand. Hello, Mayor Cooper and everyone else. I'm going to talk about economic issues, which are so important. Helping women achieve economic freedom is, of course, key to moving towards economic equality, or vice versa. Women, and especially women of color, are simply not treated equitably in our economic system. Our 5 recommendations are designed to speed up the process of changing that. Our first recommendation is to establish a telecommuting policy applicable to employees who are able to accomplish their work from home. And we now know how easy that is to accomplish. Maybe something good or positive that came out of the horrible COVID epidemic, but we do know that people can work from home. Our second recommendation is to establish by fiscal year 2020 a sick and vacation leave bank, perhaps based on the model adopted by Birmingham, which is explained more in our written report. This is a great idea from Birmingham for workers to work together to utilize available days off by people who need them and to make everyone more productive. And I think it's costly for the state, for the Metro government to do that. Our third recommendation is to create by fiscal year 2020 a multi-year action plan to achieve pay parity at all business, government, and nonprofit organizations, which is very difficult and positive of us to think we can do that, but it's a very necessary task and we need to get started on it. Our fourth recommendation is to conduct by fiscal year 2021 a study examining the cost and feasibility of offering full transgender medical benefits to include counseling, pre-surgery, surgery, post-surgery, and medical benefits for employees through current form study and formulating committee, and by fiscal year 2022 to implement full medical benefits for transgender employees. This is something that you may not have thought about, Mayor Cooper, but it's something that's very necessary, basic, and fair, and not a huge expense to our city. We need to get going on treating all women, treating the medical needs of all women, including our transgender friends. And number 5, our fifth recommendation is to set aspirational goals for companies and nonprofits that have an office in Davidson County and employ more than 100 people to achieve 15% of C-suite positions or roles to be held by women by 2025 and 20% by 2030. 10% of female CEOs to be women of color by 2025, women constituting 20% of those considered for CEO roles by 2025, and 30% by 2030, and 30% of women being considered for CEO roles by 2030, which 25% are women of color and from the LGBT community. Our city government needs to be a leader in changing things for the better. We need to use the power and prestige of the Metro government to make life better for women. And we're all committed to help you do that, Mayor Cooper. And now it's my honor to turn this over to the amazing Diane Lance, who's transforming safety for victims of domestic violence in Nashville. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Abby. And it's certainly an honor to speak after Abby Rubenfeld and also to work with so many amazing women that I've just truly respected throughout my career. And thank you, Mayor Cooper, for supporting this council and in particular, bringing its work beyond the important celebrations that are taking place, but focusing on where
screen that keeps me from just acting.
But focusing on where we need to go in the future, which has just been a wonderful, wonderful work for us all. So half of the crime, the violent crime in Nashville, is domestic violence. When you add sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse, which all falls under the umbrella of interpersonal violence, that means the majority of violent crime in Nashville targets women. And the majority of those offenders that are targeting women know their victim. And so that's why this public safety portion of this council's work is so important. A good thing that's going on, though, is that Nashville is really a model across the country in our work and efforts towards interpersonal violence. While we're far from perfect, we are who is being studied by cities across the country. The reasons for that is what the good work the city's been putting in over the last 5+ years. We have 2 family safety centers, a court-based one and a community-based ones that are award-winning and models. We uniquely have a governmental department focused on interpersonal violence and improving victim safety and offender accountability. And even more importantly, is to really watch over the system and ensure that gaps don't suddenly open up or increase in harm the work that we do. We have a model training program in our city to train all our Metro employees. We have national experts on strangulation and some remarkable multidisciplinary teams that all work to improve victim safety. So Nashville's really doing a great job in this area, but there are some strong recommendations that the council has landed on in this area. One of them is to hold an annual summit on interpersonal violence. And it is a complex network of people that work in this area. You have police, you have prosecutors, you have a court system, clerk's offices, you have the nonprofit community, sheriff's office. So they all work together around different avenues of interpersonal violence. And so it's really important to bring those stakeholders together on a regular basis to look and see what are we noticing, what are the concerns in the community, and how can we improve our work. Very similar to the comprehensive audit we did 5 years ago, but this is just making sure the conversation continues on a regular basis and that we all work together strongly. The second recommendation is to create a Safe Cities program to increase women's safety, in particular in bars and hotels, those places where women can be at particular risk. The Sexual Assault Center has launched a wonderful Safe Bars program that we're very supportive of. There's a focus that we would like to see on safe hotels, in particular focusing on human trafficking that may occur. And then some great campaigns that are out there across the country involving bystander intervention and Start by Believing. Start by Believing is just a wonderful campaign that really does send the message out that when a victim of interpersonal violence discloses their abuse, please start by believing them and work from there, because the shame and people disbelieving you is what drives this type of reporting of these crimes into the shadows. And the third recommendation is amplifying awareness and the priority of women's safety. And we think, one good starting point for that is a commitment statement. That Nashville is or will be the safest city in safest city in the country for women. And when you have a safe city for women, you have a safe city for children. That's a great sentence. Anything like that, whenever we talk about public safety, to also include in particular the safety of women. And the zero tolerance for crimes that prey on women. whether that be, women of the city or the wonderful tourists that come into our city, but prioritizing that safety of women and zero tolerance for those that are preying on them. And then awareness of the great services that we have in our city. As I said, we've got great things going on here. A lot of them are pretty new. And so increasing awareness that of what we have and how we work together so we can get more and more people to be accessing the services that we have. And then certainly as part of that third recommendation is reaching vulnerable populations, especially those that may be reluctant to access the services of our police department and the counselors that work within that. A fourth recommendation is supporting emergency services. Basically, the safety net for those that need us the very, very most, including the Safe Clinic, which is our only non-hospital location for sexual assault victims to receive their sexual assault exam. It's a great thing that we have. Again, it's a model across the country, but it needs support. To make sure we have sufficient shelter beds, especially right now with the pandemic, is making sure if someone needs to leave their situation in order for them and their children to be safe, that there is a bed available for them. And then improving our medical responses and giving exams for strangulations. 44% of Office of Family Safety victims have been strangled by an offender. And again, as I said, we have numerous experts on our staff on that, and it is a deadly crime. The strangler is a killer, just waiting to happen. Services for human trafficking victims also is a wonderful emergency service that we would like to see, increased and supported as much as possible. The fifth recommendation is eliminating loopholes that make it easy for those who are prohibited from possessing a firearm to have one. When a domestic violence offender is in possession of a firearm, it increases the risk that that victim will be killed by 500%. There are some loopholes in our system that we've outlined in the report that would be very helpful to close to make sure when you're not allowed to have a firearm by law, that that firearm is dispossessed. And then lastly, reducing unnecessary delay in domestic violence cases. Time is not on the side of a domestic violence victim who is seeking safety. When there are unnecessary delays between arrest and disposition, and those delays, pre-COVID was well over 80 days, post-COVID we're well into the hundreds. That is a case that is going to disintegrate. And that significantly reduces offender accountability, as well as a delay between the granting of an ex parte order of protection and the actual 1-year order of protection. So that in sum summarizes the recommendations, the 6 recommendations in public safety. And I'd like to pass it on to Claudia Bonneman, who will be talking about childcare.
Kevin, if you are listening, please, we really need help. Claudia.
Claudia's unmuted.
Claudia, do you have any headphones attached to your computer or another device between you and
Shiv.
Let's see, why don't we go to Marisa for civic engagement, and we will ask Kevin offline. Claudia, if you can, we will be offline via text or email helping you. All right, thank you. Marisa.
All right. I assume you can hear me. Thank you, Renata. And thank you, Mayor Cooper, for meeting with us today. I'm here to summarize the civic engagement part of the report. Around the world, and even right here in Nashville, women continue to face barriers, as you heard, to civic engagement and ability to contribute to public life and participate in solving public problems. And recognizing that gender diversity is critical to a community's success, we feel that it is important to continue this work. Empowering women to participate in civic and political life is crucial to Nashville's continued growth. Our city's progress is intrinsically linked to the progress of women and their ability to develop opportunities for pay equity and increase civic engagement, including voter registration, civic education, and efforts to fight voter suppression. The National Association of Commissions of Women estimates that there are approximately 270 existing state, county, and local commissions for women in the U.S. and its territories. These commissions advocate for equality and justice for women and serve their communities in a variety of ways depending on the resources available. Some are primarily arms of state and local government and consist of boards appointed by the mayor, governor, or a legislative body, while others are voluntary groups created to offer advice and are open to all members of the community. So as part of our recommendation, we'd like to recommend to you that you institutionalize this council by establishing a permanent Metro Nashville Council on Women and Gender Equity. It would be based upon the Chattanooga Mayor's Council for Women, with whom we met at our last physical face-to-face meeting back in March. The Nashville Council will be open to participation by all women in the community and will be dedicated to advancing policies that promote positive change for women in Nashville. The council will be operated by volunteers and will not be public. I know an issue that is of concern to many taxpayers. Like the Chattanooga model, Nashville's Council on Women and Gender Equity should be based on a system-focused, data-driven model that follows a three-pronged approach to address each policy issue of identify, research, and recommend. So I thank you for your attention. I think we're going to try to get back to Chancellor Bonneman. Is she?
Ms. Bonneman, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I've gone to a different device.
All right, we hear you now. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. I have been asked to briefly address the report on childcare from the Mayor's Council on the Status of Women. All working mothers and mothers trying to secure an education have a concrete need for childcare that will provide a safe place for intellectual and emotional growth for their children. The council believes that our community knows what must be done to provide quality care to working mothers, but the resources to make it happen and the will to make it happen are scattered. Childcare, which was an urgent issue in 2019, is now at a crisis point because COVID-19 has shut down some of the community's economic engines, complicating literally everything. Based on projections from state and national childcare experts, because of COVID-19, up to half of current childcare providers will go out of business permanently. This will be a huge problem for everyone. The council appreciates that Mayor Cooper's office has responded to COVID-19 in numerous ways that keep people safe in Nashville. The council is aware that the mayor's office is coordinating community organizations so that child care needs of frontline essential workers are effectively addressed. We thank you for this, Mayor Cooper and council. As a judge in this county for 15 years, our state's emergency lawsuits seeking to close and monitor unlicensed child care sites often came to my court. I was stunned to learn that some of these illegal sites had over 20 children to care for. The unlicensed child care sites did not keep books on their worker pay, nor could the sites follow safety rules and regulations. Usually, there was no log or registry showing what children were present and when they had arrived. On the other hand, the illegal child care sites were affordable for the working poor, and they provided care over the long hours that the parents worked. These locations were in child care deserts. Once the illegal sites were closed, there was no child care in those neighborhoods. What in the world did the parents do when the daycare they used was closed overnight? The mothers were surely out of work and without income while they cobbled together the child care they needed for their work or for their education. This perspective is just one on the struggle in Nashville for quality child care. We in the Council for the Status of Women ask that Metro Nashville, with the mayor's leadership, establish an Office of Early Learning focused on children ages newborn to 5. A focus on learning is the right focus because no mother will progress in her work or education if her children are not in a safe place, or if her children are not growing in healthy ways. We in the council ask this Office of Early Learning host an annual conference to convene stakeholders such as the Chamber of Commerce, employers, working mothers with childcare needs, and nonprofit agency leaders who have already provided great expertise to evaluate and move forward on the goal of high quality and affordable childcare for all metropolitan Nashville families. Employers are among the most important agents for valuing the lives of working mothers. Metro Nashville is uniquely situated to partner with the Nashville Chamber of Commerce to encourage and incentivize employer-subsidized childcare options, such as childcare located at employer-provided space. An Office of Early Learning can bring the right groups and representatives, including employers, around the table to address childcare for children newborn to 5, with racial equity and inclusion as its hallmark. The Council urges Metro Nashville through an Office of Early Learning to enable equitable access to high-quality childcare seats, keeping childcare deserts in mind as a serious problem in search of a solution. Public policy must promote and support the field of early education so that pay and benefits for workers in childcare are improved and top talent is attracted to this important work. We in Nashville benefit from the childcare plans and policies already generated by Blueprint for Early Success, the United Way of Greater Nashville, the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, the Child Care Alliance of Middle Tennessee, the Metro Public Schools and School Board, and respected child care directors located here. Given this expertise and energy in Nashville, a local Office of Early Learning can be the convening entity, drawing together and implementing the good quality child care that Nashville needs and deserves. So thank you, Mayor and Metro Council, for giving serious attention to our report on the many facets of women's lives in this city, including the facet of work and child care. And now I will pass the baton to the next speaker.
And I believe that speaker is me. How are you, Mayor Cooper? It's good to see you. And want to thank you for your support of the council. It has been my absolute pleasure to have worked with this group of talented women. So we know that the need for affordable housing is a well-recognized challenge that disproportionately impacts families. It's well documented that housing costs represent the largest expense faced by households, and a disproportionate number of African American and Hispanic renters shoulder a lopsided burden. You know, Metro hasn't sat idly by over the last 7 years, creating the Barnes Fund, which is invested in affordable housing, development, rehabilitation, and has leveraged hundreds of millions of dollars in federal and private funding to construct more than 1,700 housing units. Metro provided seed funding and donated property, launching the Metro Housing Trust Fund Commission's Community Land Trust, and that provided permanently affordable homeownership opportunities for our working families. But now, as the pandemic has taken hold, many are struggling to keep and hold a job while they're caring for children and trying to make ends meet. Finding a solution might now lie in how work life has changed so dramatically since the spring shutdown. In light of the COVID pandemic, we have more Metro employees working from home, the same being true in the private sector. So it begs the questions, would that free up buildings to be converted to affordable and workforce housing? And if so, how many? Will the opportunity lie in part with the MDHA voucher program? Will the opportunity lie in the funding level that may be available through pilot program incentives? We suggest that the recommended permanent Metro Nashville Council on Women and Gender Equity be tasked with further examination of these opportunities in concert with the mayor's office. We need to look at identifying the statistics of public and private sector employees working from home and the projection post-pandemic of those workforces, and will they continue to work remotely? And what will that free up? And if it does free up facilities, how many potential affordable housing units is that going to create? Will the upcoming Equity Alliance report, funded by Metro, also include a focus on housing, especially for those that are most at risk? What planning and codes policies or adjustments need to be made that would allow these incentives, and it would offer us an opportunity to possibly convert office to residential? And finally, what other partnerships exist in the public-private sector that would offer us opportunity for land dedication, maybe through the Housing Trust Fund or the Barnes Fund. So in summary, how long will it take to meet our accelerating need without thinking outside the box and looking at new public-private partnership opportunities? We can look to make lemonade out of the lemons that the pandemic has handed us by capitalizing on this very pandemic that has changed not only the way we work, but where we work. I would now like to introduce Mattia Powell, who's going to address early voting during the pandemic. And again, thank you.
Hello. There's no better way for us to celebrate the suffrage centennial than having a record turnout in the November election. As Bonnie so eloquently stated earlier, Tennessee ranks at the bottom of voter registration and turnout. And at the same time, Tennessee is one of the hardest states to vote in. COVID-19 has brought even more challenges and uncertainty to this process. And while the state does make and are in jurisdiction of a lot of the voting laws, we do feel like the mayor's office can help encourage and educate Nashville voters. Making a plan to vote early is going to be the best way for Nashvillians to cast their vote. Therefore, we recommend that the mayor's office participates in the Vote Early campaign, encouraging Nashvillians to vote early on National Vote Early Day on October 24th, 2020. And we also recommend that the mayor's office use some of the press briefing time to really encourage voting, to help educate voters on early voting periods, absentee voting, as well as as well as poll working opportunities. And with that being said, I'm actually going to pass this back over to you, Mayor. We really appreciate your time today and listening to all of our recommendations. So I'm going to pass it to you for any comments or questions that you may have.
Well, can you all hear me? I hope. Thank you. That was a blessing for me. I'm so grateful to this incredible work and to this summit. And I want to thank Kathy and Mary from our office, but Ann and Alma and Brenda and Bonnie and Abby and Diane and Claudia and Marissa and Sherry and you, Mattia. That's incredible what you're talking to me about. And I'm grateful for you partnering and extending our office in our city's mission to be a better city. And we need your help to do that, to partner and to extend and to focus where we can make a difference. I certainly warmly embrace the Chattanooga model and to make this council a permanent addition to our city. And each of the speakers focused dramatic needs that need to be addressed. But I want to stand back for a moment and thank everybody, and particularly Alma, in the dedication of the monument in Centennial Park. I mean, that's a great thing that we can make permanent. Pleasure in seeing every day that was done. It was not easy to do, and that's a permanent physical addition to our city. But what you all are talking about is how to make a permanent improvement in all of our lives, and particularly women's lives in the years ahead, and let's do that. And the fact that today is Women's Equality Day is just a great day to have this discussion. And I want to thank you all for inviting me and the opportunity to learn. And these findings and recommendations are, each set of them are really extraordinarily important. I mean, it would be great to do this in person, but we can't lose these months. And I appreciate being able to do this here in cyberspace. I do look forward to doing this in person when public health conditions allow that to happen. Now, Nashville, the leadership of women in Nashville, you know, we're celebrating 100 years of that extraordinary leadership of women in Nashville, and that needs to continue. The next century needs to get more done than the last century. We're grateful for what happened, but let's use what happened here 100 years ago as a a encouragement. But these are laurels we can't rest on. Now, the leadership team here in the mayor's office is 50% women, and as wonderfully, our Metro Council is 50% women. And this, I think, allows us to make decisive moves for things like gender and pay equity, domestic violence, issues around childhood and early childhood education. These are important topics and need to have a strong response by this office and by the city. Now, on the topic of gender wage equity and metro government, a little bit as a report back to this group, I've asked Shannon Hall, our Director of Human Resources, to provide a brief update, and I'd like to share with you that update from Shannon. And I'm grateful, by the way, separately to call the city's attention that we need contractors also to participate in these initiatives. And it doesn't stop just with Metro, but how far Metro can extend our mission. But Shannon advises me that Metro's pay plan structure, which applies to all civil service employees, is one of the more equitable structures used by employers. And for step pay increments, traits such as gender or race cannot be a factor. Now, for the open range pay, each department has to submit a methodology for these pay increases to Metro HR for review and approval. And these must be equitable and based on employee performance, duties and responsibilities, accreditation, and length of time in the position. But that's an important area, I think, of historic pay inequity to be addressed by human resources. Now, one important change that Metro implemented a few years ago was the removal of salary history to help address any unintended pay inequities in the hiring process. And that's, if you think about it, incredible. In order to change outcomes, we need to remove the dead weight of history from keeping us behind. And this change applies to all employees, but it does particularly help women and people of color. Now, all the recommendations today from the council are incredibly important, and all of them are, I'm grateful for such a concrete set of policy recommendations and improvement. And of course, women do need to be 50% of corporate boards, just as women are now finally representing 50% of the Metro Council. And I'm inspired. I mean, I want to thank Bonnie warning me that, you know, this is a report that you think of that has more absences than fulfilling our goals, but because it's challenging doesn't mean that we don't have to respond to that. But this goal, by the way, of being the safest city for women in the country, I think is something that is just an outstanding challenge to the city and an opportunity, if we get that done, for all of us. And childcare is the work of all genders, and I do think that the pandemic is going to focus us as we learn from it to become a better city and the greatest city in the 21st century. The child care is going to be one of the important initiatives and areas that requires success for us to achieve those goals. But I'm excited to be working with you in this Chattanooga model, and where all women are welcome and have a role in researching the best practices from around the world to make Nashville a better community. I think you've demonstrated here how valuable that is as a policy resource. And I want to thank all of you for serving on the council. Your work here and in your own professional lives is so essential to moving the city forward. Now, a lot has changed since this group was formed. There's a new mayor, there's been a tornado, there are financial challenges, and now COVID-19, which has just got to be the biggest challenge for any city in the last 100 years. And with that, particularly COVID, there are going to be social, emotional, and economic impacts. And I need this group to make sure that these changes help produce a better society in the other end of COVID for all people, including women. And I'm going to rely on this group to keep us focused on how to do that, how to get through this storm and have a better city on the other side. And I'm grateful for your ability to pivot, to address these challenges and these changes. I mean, we're going to be recovering for a while, I think. And we have to get a vaccine and we have to get back to normal, but some businesses are going to be changed forever by COVID. And with those changes is also an opportunity to do it better than was done before, to be more inclusive, to be fairer, to treat people with a greater level of respect, to have people included in our society and our economy in a way that they never have been. And that is particularly true for women, for all groups. And again, on this day, Equality Day, and recognizing what women in Nashville got done 100 years ago, I want to challenge the women of Nashville today to make the next 100 years better. So with that, Mattia, thank you for recognizing me. But I want to recognize each of you for this great work that has been done. And Anne and Brenda and Renata, thank you. Thank you so much for your leadership of this group.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. We don't want to overstay the 1 hour that you allocated for this meeting with us. We are grateful for your time. We hope that you see that our recommendations are based on data, on research, on our collective expertise in so many fields. But above all, the recommendations are really born out of our lived experiences as women living, working, and leading in Nashville as academics, lawyers, judges, artists, activists, teachers, mothers, and daughters. And so we hope that you know that this group stands ready to be the first to move the recommendations in this report forward, to serve on the Metro Nashville Council of Women and Gender Equity, and to serve our city in all the ways. We know that when women do well, our city does well. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to all the council members for your amazing work this last year and a little bit more, and for all the contributions that brought us to this day. Thank you, Mayor Cooper, for your time.
Thank you, Renata.
Well, with that, I guess our meeting is concluded, and thanks to everyone for all your hard work. And thank you again to Mayor Cooper and to your office.
Thank you, Anne. Very grateful.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.